love all things Halloween, and I needed a Halloween wreath for my door, so I got this idea when I was looking at some old Halloween photographs, and I'm going to share how I did it with you on a quick video tutorial. So starting with what I used, quick trip to Asda's, and I got some sparkly spiders. I got some skeletons on a string. All of these very reasonably priced, I think. And some fab skull chain, which I've already opened. I know this is going to have tons of possibilities. And a flat-backed wreath, foam polystyrene wreath. A few bandages. Not quite sure how this is going to work out because at the moment it's just an idea that I've sketched on a piece of paper. Starting with a bit of tubular bandage, I'm going to wrap my wreath. So I'm very much designing this as I go. I'm just videoing everything that I do and think of as I design and make this project, and I hope it inspires you to either have a go at what I've done or try something similar for yourself. Next step is to wrap your wreath to look like a mummy's head, so more nursing skills to be practiced here. I've got a crepe bandage because it's quite stretchy and it makes the job a little bit easier to wrap. So I'm taking my bandage right around the outside first, and then I'm going to wrap it as if it's a mummy's head. And I'm just checking that I've wrapped my bandage so that I've got room to pop in a scary mouth and somewhere to sit the eyes for my mummy when I've made them. So I'm happy with the placement of my bandages. Just have a little play, and here you can see a polystyrene ball that I'm going to cut in half and use to make the scary eyeballs for my mummy. I should probably have some gruesome blood spurting effects as I cut into make one eyeball into two. Just be careful, I'm using a vegetable knife. Just be careful of your fingers as you do this, and it does make a bit of a mess, as you can see. Just testing here to see if my eyeballs fit scale wise. I'm happy with the size of them, they're poking out a little bit too much, so I'm going to take a little bit off the back with my knife. So the next bit of video is going to be me painting these to look like eyeballs, but I'm pretty sure if you don't like painting that you could find at this time of year eyeballs out there that you probably could use instead of painting your own. So a couple of coats of white acrylic paint later, and now I'm going to make the base of the eyeball look like it's a bit bloodshot. I punched out 2 paper circles and traced around the largest to position the irises of my eyeballs ready to paint. I did try using some fake blood to put around the bottom of my eyeballs, but as it dries it doesn't work out so well, so I've gone, or I will go over it with some red acrylic paint. So I started out by painting my eyeballs yellow, and then using some bright green I started to do the scary markings on my eyeballs. I wanted them nice and bright, a bit cartoon-like, but still a little bit scary. I'm starting to add in some darker shades of green now to put in the markings on my eyeballs, and I'm going to cut this clip, although it's on fast forward, I'm going to cut bits out as I really don't want you to have to sit there and watch paint dry, but just to give you the highlights of how I painted my eyeballs, and just to give you a few tips if you decide to paint your own. The hardest thing I found painting these eyeballs was this bit actually, to make my two irises look like they belong to the same mummy. It did take me a little while to get my two eyeballs to look like they were a pair. Made a lot of mess along the way. If you use a heat gun to dry your paint, then just be careful you don't melt the polystyrene balls. I went back in with my red acrylic, as I said earlier, because the fake blood that I used didn't work. It kind of sank into the paint. So here I am making my mummy's eyeballs look like she's had definitely one too many nights on the town. Could do with a good sleep, I think. I'm a bit of a messy worker, as you can see from my fingers. I'm leaving paint where I don't want it, but if you just use a little bit of damp tissue, as long as it's on dry paint, you can remove it quite easily. The eyeballs are starting to look good, but my mummy is definitely much too clean. So again, using acrylic paint and some of that fake blood, which works better this time on the bandages, I'm going to create the sockets for my eyes to sit, and then I'm going to dirty up my bandages to make sure that my mummy looks realistic, because they definitely wouldn't look this clean after all those years of sitting in their crypt waiting to come out on Halloween and scare us. If you opt to use a pen to put the pupils of your eyeballs in, just make sure that your paint is very, very dry, otherwise you'll ruin your lovely pens. I just found out that I had a little bit more precision, so I decided to use my pen to put in the pupils of my eyes. But then I added the little white highlight with white acrylic paint again. Once I was happy with my eyeballs, I started to think about how I was going to put this project together. So I'm hot gluing my eyeballs into position, tucking them slightly under the bandages, and then I'm going to take a look at the bits and pieces that I bought and how I'm going to add them to my project. As I was playing, I decided that the spider's legs would make quite good spooky eyelashes for my mummy. It took me quite a while to get them right, and I'm sorry about my head keep popping in. I was obviously concentrating very hard. Looks like my roots are okay though, so that's all right. But I finally got there, and I think cutting the two spiders in half worked quite well. Then I added the white highlights to my eyes. Not my eyes, my mummy's eyes. So taking another length of crepe bandage, I'm starting to fashion a bow for my mummy, and I had to take the paint again and dirty it up so she looked like she was rather ancient and smelly, but still of course wearing the latest fashion accessory that a mummy might wear. I used another little bit of bandage to stuff my bow to make sure that it didn't go droopy when it's hanging on the door outside, and I just used my glue gun to help tuck and keep everything in position. Right, now I'm tracing out what looks like a very happy smile at the moment, just checking for size, and then add the paint to make things look realistic. And the acrylic paint will help protect it a little bit outside anyway, and it's hanging on my door. And I'm cutting out some gorgeous fangs and a top lip. Definitely no Botox here. Although I'm not sure quite how long her lipstick would have lasted. She'd really been buried for 1,000 years. And here I am adding the final touches with the spooky spiders, which could quite easily be beetles if you've got beetles, or scarabs. Keeping with the Egyptian theme, but I quite like the spiders. And how gorgeous does my mummy look? Sorry, Mum. So next I cut my plaque ready for my wording, which I gave a couple of generous coats of lime green paint. Once it was dry, excuse me, keep jumping into shot, I added a thick coat of Ranger Distress Crackle paint, which added a bit of texture and a bit of an aged look to my plaque. Once that was dry, I took again the Distress ink, black soot, and the Distress embossing powder, which was also black soot, and I started to create a frame, embossing the powder all the way randomly round the edges of the plaque until I got to this point where I added a little bit more ink because it was looking a bit too clean. Gave it a little bit of a brush off with my tissue and was ready to add the lettering. And I had some lovely black glittery lettering in my stash, so I've, rather than rely on the glue that's on the letters, I'm using my glue gun to put them in place. I had to make my own A, which you can just about see on this shot, which I made out of a V because I ran out of letters. And then if you remember that I had some lovely chain with skulls, so I'm marking out, dividing the back of my plaque and then using the crocodile to punch holes ready to join the chain to suspend my skull fringe from, which I've completed there. Things are starting to take shape now, and the next thing I did was take my lovely piece of chain from Asda, which I took all the skulls off, and the chain's already got little nicks in, so that job was quite easy. And then I took my chain and, using the same principle, I just cut part the way into the link to allow me to cut the chain or divide the chain into lengths of 5 links and 3 links, and then that also made it easy to join one end to my plaque and the other end to a skull, like you can see here, and I can catch hold of the dangling skull. I think I might have to add some red jewels to the eyes of those skulls. I think that would look quite neat. So once I'd got all my chain attached, then I just went along the bottoms of all the chains where I'd cut into the link and hooked the skulls back on to make a very gruesome fringe, which I actually was quite pleased with. I knew that was a good buy, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to find lots of uses for that skull chain that I bought from Asda. So if I were you, I'd go and buy some now before I buy it all. So next I had a little bit of a fiddle to decide how far away I wanted my plaque to hang from my mummy's head, and I cut 2 lengths of chain to match and attach them to my plaque. And then I had to decide how to attach it to my mummy, and I came up with the idea of using these eyes from Metal Hook and Eyes that you normally get to hang net curtains. That's the last time I used them, or picture frame wires to attach the back of pictures. And this did take me a little, because they're quite small, it took me a little while, and I used my glue gun to make sure that they're attached firmly. I might have been better to get some bigger hooks. And then I just thought it needed a final touch to pick my lettering out a bit more. So back with the acrylic red paint and a bit of a blood bath on my letters. Then I cut a little hole in the back of the tubey grip bandage that I'd wrapped around my wreath, so that I could hook her on my newly painted door, on the hook that my husband put there specially for me. And I hope you think that she looks rather wonderful, and that she's going to scare a few children when they come knocking on my door trick-or-treating this Halloween. I hope this tempts you to try and make a wonderful mummy for yourself this year. I had great fun making it. It took me probably a day and a half on and off, getting on with the normal family life in between, and I had great fun doing it. So that all that's left for me is to say Happy Halloween.